When it comes to getting faster over the longer distances, it isn't just about those intervals or tempo runs. Long distance races are aerobic events, and your aerobic engine is what sets your ceiling. And there's one workout that builds that engine better than anything else: the long run. And it's not just about logging those longer miles, it's about what you do with those miles that really counts. So if you want to run faster for longer, the long run isn't optional, it's absolutely essential. And as we now enter summer, this is the time to start maximising your long runs, so that when you come out the other side into the autumn or fall, you're in the best position to smash that PB on race day. Now, I talk about long runs a fair bit on the channel, and that's because I'm really passionate about how much I feel they have improved me as a runner and how I feel they can improve you guys. For me, long runs used to be this big scary run at the end of the week that I used to dread, and now it has become an absolute bread and butter that I probably obsess a little bit too much over in my weekly schedule. But that's because I know how much bang for my buck I can get from my long run, and so it's a real big staple in my weekly training routine. And just before we get into how I feel you guys can maximise your long runs this summer, and then talk about that 2-hour rule that we hear bounded around so much, I want to share a few reasons as to why the long run is so important. First of all, it improves your muscular endurance. The repetitive stress of time on feet strengthens the slow twitch muscle fibres, and those are the powerhouse behind endurance performance. Now, if you often find you cramp towards the end of a longer distance race, in particular the marathon itself, I often talk a lot on this channel about lifetime miles really making the difference. In fact, I've said that quite a lot recently, and that's because the more you stack up those long runs in your lifetime, the more miles that you guys can log, the more your muscles get used to it and become a bit more resilient to that fatigue, meaning you can stretch yourself out a little bit longer, and eventually what you'll find is you become really strong over the longer distances. Number two, it creates great training adaptations. Long runs provide a lower intensity, depending on how you do them really, but high stress stimulus that promotes recovery, adaptation and overall running economy. Now, of course, I have to throw in depending on how you do them, because we're talking about potentially going out and doing an easy long run, which more so reflects that statement, or we could be doing long run workouts or steady long runs, which might take a little bit more recovery time, but again, you get even more bang for your buck, and we'll talk about those shortly. Number three, it absolutely, without a doubt, boosts your mental toughness. Spending time alone, I guess if you run alone, on longer efforts teaches you how to stay focused, patient, and work through discomfort, which of course, as we all know, are key skills when it comes to those longer distance events. I do obviously highly recommend doing your long runs in a group if you can. It really does make the miles and kilometers pass so much quicker. But if you are flying solo out on those long runs, I can assure you it's actually one of the best things you can do, because it really does make you lock in up here, and when you finish those long runs you really do feel accomplished. And of course, it gives you a chance to train your fueling and hydration. Long runs, of course, are the perfect time to dial in your nutrition and avoid those GI issues on race day. And quite honestly, this is my number one thing that I am hammering in 2025. This is a thing personally that lets me down massively when it comes to the marathon itself, and so I can assure you that I will be practicing my nutrition and hydration on pretty much every single long run leading up to the autumn, which I've already started and been hammering it for a good month now. Now, of course, depending on your training, depends on the type of long runs you do. Of course, we can do the traditional easy slow long runs, which might be labeled as LSRs, long slow runs. You can do steady long runs or moderate long runs, or you can do long run workouts, and it really does depend on what you're training for. And as I aim for this video to be clear and concise, I could chat for 20, 30, 40 minutes on this topic. I won't. I'm just going to be as to the point as I can be in this next section. Now, for me, in a recent 5k training block, I tended to peak my long runs in and around that 90 to 95 minute mark. A couple went slightly over, but on the whole, that was the target. Whereas if I was training for a marathon, they'd much more be in the realms in the peak phase of around 2 to 2 hours 45. Both of these will contain long run workouts. They're just going to be different and of course tailored to the specific event that I'm training for. So for a 5k, there are a couple of ways that you can approach that, and if you want to get in peak shape, some of the more traditional ways are to do 3 workouts a week: Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. A lot of people, as we get older, including myself, can't handle that level of intensity, because that would mean you're doing 3 relatively intense sessions, maybe a couple of race specific sessions and maybe a longer tempo session. Whereas for me, what I like to try and do in my long runs in a 5k build is have 1 race specific session in the week, 1 more tempo threshold, so a little bit more relaxed, and then an even more relaxed session where I really am working maybe in and around marathon effort during my long runs, and I'm putting around about 30 minutes of that effort in a 90-minute long run itself. What I find as a slightly older runner is that helps me work on all the supporting paces as well as that race specific pace. I will always move the race specific session to the first one of the week so that I'm the freshest and I can attack that one with the most energy that I'm going to have that week. And then of course, when I get to the long run itself, I find that I'm a little bit more relaxed anyway, and I can enjoy that one a lot more. I'm not advocating that as a way to particularly train for a 5K. If you're younger than me and you've got a little bit more energy and a little bit more bounce back ability, then you're definitely going to want to go down the route of maybe 3 specific sessions. That's going to get you in the best shape. But for me, that's how I like to use the long run in a 5K block. And then we move to the marathon. Suddenly that long run has a little bit more purpose. It actually becomes one of the sessions of the week. So whereas in a 5K block, I might use it just to throw in a little bit of tempo work, a little bit of pace change, just to keep everything nice and aerobic, but a little bit of an injection of pace. When I get to the marathon, this is where I'm locking in to marathon pace. And this is what we'll come to shortly. My sessions in the week will be adapted so that I can really lock in and focus on that long run. And that will be the target run of the week, where I really want to make sure I'm as best fueled as I can be, as best hydrated as I can be, and ready to rock and roll with some marathon specific work and maybe some quicker work in there too. You can see instantly the importance of that long run shifts from event to event. So it really does differ for what you're training for. What I want you guys to consider this summer is, if you are in maybe a base phase or maybe a non-race specific phase, utilize this time now before your autumn or fall goal race to really work on that long run. I'm going to give you 5 suggestions of what you can do with your long runs to spice them up and really help you run faster for longer as you really build up that aerobic engine with these long runs. First things first, increase the volume if you can. Undeniably, this is one of the most easiest ways you guys can improve. If you've had a routine where you are sat at a certain level of volume for a while now, you're probably in a position where you can consider adding maybe 5 to 10 minutes to that long run over a 2-weekly cycle. Obviously, I don't know what your training structure is. You might be doing 2 weeks up, 1 week down, 3 weeks up, 1 week down, or just a permanent steady maintenance build where you're not taking down weeks. So it really is going to depend on how much you add to each week's long run. But I always recommend moving up and then sitting and holding there for a good 2 or 3 weeks before maybe considering adding another 5 minutes onto that. But it's just something that we can't look past, and I'll give you guys some suggestions in a second. Don't worry if you're not able to add volume. I appreciate so many of us out there have commitments, and it means that we just have to squeeze in what we can when we can. So if you have the option, please do consider adding a little bit of volume to that long run. It really will make the difference if you can stack those up week after week. Number 2, if you can't have volume, that is absolutely fine. Let's add in some surges to those long runs. So what I like to do with my athletes that have come from a background of maybe just doing easier long runs, or we're just in that very, very early marathon phase where we might be between 20 and 16 weeks out, and I'm wanting to get them ready for what's to come in the much more specific phase as we get closer to race day, is throw in some surges towards the end of those runs. And I say this to all my athletes, and I mean it, these surges are not at any specific pace. You on a given day will feel good or bad or indifferent. You might feel really good on that day, in which case that pace that you pick up those surges to might feel incredible and you might be able to pick it up quite quickly. Other days you're going to feel a bit more sluggish, maybe a bit fatigued from everything that's going on in life, and therefore that pace pickup might just be a few seconds a K or a few seconds a mile. Either way, it's absolutely fine. What you are doing is starting to condition your body to pick up the pace in the second half of a long run, and I can assure you there is no better feeling when you are able to negative split a race. And the start of that all starts in training when you are picking up the pace in the second half of the long run. Of course, there are plenty of cut down workouts and loads of interval workouts that will help with this too, but if you're out there for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, and you just throw in 5 by a minute, 10 by a minute, 5 by 2 minutes, just at the end of the long run, and you are literally just accelerating and treating them as a relaxed effort, they will do you the world of good and prepare you for maybe something bigger in the future. And if you've already mastered the surges, then the next one might be for you. The third one I want to recommend, which is going to massively help once again and really focus on that second half of the long run, is just a standard negative split long run. If you don't know what a negative split is, it means you run the second half quicker than the first half. A couple of ways you can do this: just a standard easy to steady pickup, or even just an easy, a relaxed recovery pace to easy effort, where you're just increasing things a few seconds per K or per mile. That's a great place to start. Or if you're quite familiar with your moderate effort or your steady effort, going from easy to steady is also a great way to start. Other than that, you can look at progression long runs, where I recommend, and with my athletes I'll do it, where they start at their very recovery easy pace and then finish up just below their marathon effort, and have them increase that every K or mile, or in timed intervals where they're just locking in for a certain pace range for 5 or 10 minutes and then stepping up to the next pace range. And again, it just teaches your body to go up through the gears. And number 4, the steady or moderate long run. A lot of people call it steady, I like to call it moderate. Whatever you like to call it, for me it's pretty much zone 2. It won't be zone 2 for everybody. it's still below your aerobic threshold, so just below LT1. I'm not going to go to detail on this video about that. What I will say is this is a pace that is roughly, and I mean very roughly, halfway between your easy effort and your marathon effort. It's that step up from easy, but you're not quite at marathon effort there. This one takes a little bit of trial and error. This is what I was talking about in the progressional long run when you go from easy to steady. When you can master running a steady long run, this is where in the past I have found during base phases and any other phase that I'm using the steady long runs, they give me one heck of a fitness increase. Zone 2 running for me has been transformational over the years. Actually, what it's allowed me to do is just spice up those long runs ever so slightly. I really do find the easy long run to be a little bit sluggish, a little bit clunky. My form's not great anyway, so to be able to pick it up slightly, still get the same benefits as I do with an easy long run, but also feel like I'm moving a little bit quicker, has been an absolute game changer for me. I've been doing it for absolutely years, and I highly recommend it. Again, this is something that I like to weave into my athlete's plan. I start slowly and we build up to the point where they can tick along and do a good solid long run at a moderate or steady effort. And if you can master all those, then number 5 will be the icing on the cake, a specific long run workout where you are throwing in race pace intervals to your long runs. In particular, let's just home in on the marathon here. I also do this in a half marathon block as well with my long runs. I don't tend to quite so much with the 10 and 5k training because I leave the specific work for those midweek as we've talked about, but for the half marathon and the marathon, these are the key to unlocking massive potential for so many people. Being able to do, for example, a good 15, 20, 30 minute warm up before getting into some longer race pace intervals, and I'm not going to go into specific workouts here. I've done plenty of videos on those. Being able to change gears up to that race pace and create yourself a little bit of fatigue beforehand with that longer warm up and cool down can honestly make such a huge difference. All the benefits I talked about in the beginning come into play. We're going to get all that wonderful endurance benefit from the long run, plus we're going to get that benefit from the speed that we've injected, and this is just the piece de resistance when it comes to these long run workouts. I honestly can't recommend them highly enough. If you start with timed intervals, sometimes starting with 3-minute efforts at race pace within your workouts and building up much longer to those more marathon specific sessions can be a great place to start. When I start my marathon or half marathon build, I'll often start with 3-minute efforts. But I will be honest with you, these aren't for the faint-hearted. You do need to build up to them, and I do feel like everything we talked about before will build you up to this point, and hopefully by the end of the summer you'll be able to give 1 or 2 of these a go. And speaking of being out there for a long time on feet, banking all of that wonderful long run goodness, the 2-hour rule that we hear so much about. What's the deal with it, and what are my thoughts on it? Well, multiple studies have shown that bigger adaptations happen in the body when you've been running for over 30 minutes and then over 2 hours. And so I think that's why you might hear a lot of people talk about that magical 2-hour mark. The flip side of this though, again with plenty of research backing this, is being out time on feet for over 3 hours can be too detrimental for your week to come. If you're not recovering well, the fatigue generated from anything over 3 hours can be too much and really put you at a much higher injury risk. There's a really fine balance to be had here, because of course my marathon time is 2 hours and 40. Well, that's the best one that I've ever done. More recently, 2 hours 44. And so I like to keep my long runs between 2 hours and 2 hours and 45 minutes. That's the sweet spot for me, and I'll aim to get 6 of those done within a marathon build. But what if your marathon time is, let's say, slower than 3 hours 30 or slower than 4 hours? What do you do then? Well, that one is a little bit of a loaded question, to be honest with you, and it's a really tricky one to answer. So I'll try and summarize it in the best way possible. Sometimes what I recommend to a client that may be running a 4 to 4.5 to 5 hour marathon is that if they want to do one long run that goes over the 3 hour mark, then I will turn a blind eye to it, because I appreciate they need a little bit of confidence of that time on feet and also the conditioning for their body too. Let's not forget the mental and physical aspects there. What I'll then do is adapt their plan for that week so the intensity before and after completely disappears and they keep everything nice and easy, potentially even do a little bit of cross training to allow their body to relax. If, however, that athlete wants to keep their intensity in, then it's pretty much a complete no-no, and I will just say, look, do you know what? We need to cap it at that 2 hour 45 mark, 3 hours tops, and we'll just leave it there. If you want to keep up with the intensity and keep that positive trajectory going of that speed work week in, week out, leading up to the race day, then let's just push pause at that 3 hour mark. I'm sure there'll be a fair few people in the comments that have opinions on that, and of course, if you do, I'd love to hear it down below. Of course, I don't particularly advocate going over that 3 hour mark. It's not great, it's never worth the risk, and I think if you are going to do it, then it really is worth considering stripping out any intensity before and after to really respect your body's recovery so that you can go again the following week or the week after, because ultimately ultimately, the build up to a marathon is about consistency. If you're going to jeopardize that consistency, then it really can be a bad thing. So there we go, that's the benefits on the long run, how I would progress my long runs this summer if I were you guys, to maximize them, get the most bang for your buck, so that by the end of this summer, you are feeling fit and ready to smash those PBs in the autumn. And of course, my take on that 2-hour rule. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Please do drop a comment down below. It'd be great to hear from you down there. And if you've enjoyed this video, guys, there's plenty more long run videos on this channel that you can search up. Just go into YouTube, type FOD Runner long run, and you'll get a plethora of videos that appear. Also, if you enjoyed this video today, you might enjoy this one up here. This one might be a good one for you, or you might be interested in this video down here. Either way, hopefully I will see you guys over on one of those.